We were on the last stretch of summer, that kind of late August heat that felt like it clung to your skin with intention. My wife, Ava, had insisted on a beach day, just the four of us, she said, in that light voice she used when she was trying to pretend everything was still okay. Our two kids, Ivy and Ben, had already stripped off their sandals before we even reached the sand, darting toward the water like it had been calling them all year. I set up the umbrella and laid out the towels. Ava lingered a bit behind us, checking her reflection in the car window. I watched her from the corner of my eye, the way she adjusted her swimsuit strap and smoothed her hair back. She used to do that for me. Lately, it felt like everything she did was for someone I couldn't see. I need to go refresh myself, she said suddenly, brushing sand off her legs. You've got them, right? I nodded, though she didn't wait for the answer. Just kissed the top of Ben's head and walked off toward the boardwalk, that little sway in her hips more noticeable than usual. I watched her disappear into the line of pale beach houses that backed the dunes. The kids were happy. Ben built a lopsided sandcastle, and Ivy tried to teach a crab how to use a spoon. I kept checking my watch, not because I didn't trust her, but because she'd been gone longer than usual. 30 minutes. Then 40. When she came back, she looked new. Hair a little damp, cheeks warm, that low half-smile she used to give me when we were dating, like she was full of something she didn't quite want to share yet. I stood up and brushed the sand off my hands, half ready to ask if everything was okay. But then Ivy looked up from her towel and said it. Mommy went up to her uncle, the one sitting upstairs in the house. My stomach turned, but my voice stayed calm. What uncle, sweetie? Ivy pointed with the same hand that held her juice box toward the row of beach houses. One of them had a wraparound porch and a Lifeguard tower tacked onto the back like an afterthought. It was taller than the rest, and perched inside, a man was leaning on the railing. He was tanned, fit, shirtless, and waving to her. I turned to Ava. Her hand was raised, not fast, not casual. It wasn't a greeting wave, it was a soft one, fingers spread slightly, like she was touching glass between them. She smiled again, only this time it was different. I knew that smile. It had once belonged to me. I didn't say anything. I just watched as she let her hand fall, brushing it against her thigh like it had burned her. She sat down beside me, asked if I'd remembered to put sunscreen on Ben, and handed Ivy a new juice box she hadn't left with. But everything had already changed. That Lifeguard, if he even was one, turned away and disappeared into the top level of the beach house. And Ava, she didn't look at me. Not directly. She looked at the kids, the horizon, her phone. Not me. Not once. Later, when she took Ben to the water, Ivy leaned close to me and said, I saw them hug, Daddy. It looked like a secret hug. I didn't answer her. I just stared at the house, wondering how long that porch had been there. How many times she looked at me the way she just looked at him. And how many more things Ivy might say if I kept pretending I didn't want to hear the truth. The house didn't belong there. That was the first thing I realized when I walked the beach later that night, after the kids were asleep and Ava was pretending not to scroll her phone. It was past 10, the shoreline quiet but not dead, the waves soft as breath against the sand. That's when I noticed it, how the beach houses all matched. Pastel siding, white trim, neat railings and American flags. Except for one. The one with the tower. It was taller, weather-beaten, less like a house and more like something that had been added to, grown out of something older. The porch lights were off, but a lamp glowed upstairs in the tower, just bright enough to silhouette someone standing behind the glass. I didn't wave. I just stood there on the shore, feeling like the night itself had closed around me. And I waited to see if the figure would move. He didn't. He watched. I walked back slowly, the sand cold now under my feet. When I opened the door to our rental, Ava looked up from the couch like I'd interrupted something. Everything okay? She asked, her voice a little too even. I nodded, sat on the far end of the couch. She smelled faintly of salt and something sweeter, Something not from the beach. Kids are out, I said. She nodded, then looked back down at her phone. Ivy's sunburned. I told you she needed more SPF. I didn't reply. I was watching her fingers. They were trembling just slightly as she scrolled, like she couldn't quite hold the calm together. Who is he? I asked quietly. She didn't respond. For a few seconds, it was just the sound of her nail tapping against the screen. Who's the man in the lifeguard tower? I don't know what you're talking about, she said. She didn't look at me. You waved at him. I waved at a lifeguard, she said too quickly. What are you implying? That Ivy saw you go into the house. Ava turned then, slowly, and for a moment her expression was something I hadn't seen in years: fear. Just a flash. Then it was gone. She misunderstood, she said. I want to use the restroom up by the boardwalk. It's hot. I got dizzy. I sat down for a while. Some man asked if I was okay, and I said I was fine. Did he touch you? She blinked. What? Did he touch you, Ava? Silence. Then, you're scaring me. I leaned back, exhaled slowly. I didn't want to press too hard, not yet. I didn't want her to know I'd already made up my mind. Something had happened, and it hadn't happened today. It had happened before. The next morning, I took the kids for donuts. Told her to sleep in, which she did, without much protest. At the cafe, Ivy sat swinging her legs under the table, humming to herself. Hey, baby, I said gently. Yesterday, when you said Mommy went to see your uncle, what did he look like? She frowned, like she was trying to remember a dream. He was up in the house. Mommy was smiling. He gave her a drink in a glass. Then they sat on a couch. I saw it through the window. What kind of drink? She shrugged. It had ice cubes, like the clink kind, and a lemon. My stomach sank. And then what? I dunno. They were just talking. He put his hand on her leg, like how you do when you watch movies. But Mommy looked different, like she was hiding. I didn't ask more. Ivy had already told me more than I could handle. Back at the rental, Ava was out on the porch sipping coffee. She was wearing a robe I hadn't seen before. White. Not hers. Not from our luggage. Where'd that come from? I asked as casually as I could. She looked down at it, feigning surprise. Oh, it was in the closet. Thought it was part of the Airbnb. There was no robe in the closet. I'd unpacked every damn hanger. You look rested, I said. She smiled. I am. Then, without looking up from her mug, she said, Don't start spinning stories, okay? I paused. I didn't say anything. But you're thinking it. That's when I knew. She wasn't scared anymore. She was 2 steps ahead, talking to me like I was a child in the middle of a tantrum. Like she had already decided how this would go. Ivy's young, she said softly. She mixes things up. She still calls the garbage truck a dragon, remember? I nodded, but I wasn't looking at her anymore. I was looking at the tower. The man was there again, backlit by the sun. He was shirtless, arms crossed, posture too casual for someone on duty. And for a moment, just a moment, he lifted his hand and ran it slowly across his jaw, down his neck, and toward the curve of his shoulder. The same way I'd seen Ava do when she was thinking about someone she hadn't let go of. I watched her from the corner of my eye. She was watching him, not even hiding it. I didn't say a word, just picked up Ivy and said we were going for a walk. And I left Ava on the porch, sunlight on her skin, eyes on the man in the tower. Still smiling. I didn't sleep that night. Ava's breathing was even beside me, too even, like someone pretending to sleep. Her back to me, arm draped over her waist. That robe, still folded on the chair, mocked me every time I turned my head. I kept thinking about Ivy's voice, her tiny certainty. He put his hand on her leg. It was the specificity of it. Not like a story she invented. Not the way she described mermaids or pirates or the cloud that looked like a horse. This wasn't imagination. This was memory. The next morning, I told Ava I wanted to take the kids to the small town museum. She didn't object, just handed Ivy her sunglasses and kissed Ben's head like we were still playing family. But I didn't take them to the museum. I dropped them at a supervised kids center near the pier, hourly, cash-based, no questions. Then I walked back to the beach, back to that house. I needed to know who he was. Not just a lifeguard. Not just some stranger waving. Something in Ava's body language had told me this wasn't recent. It wasn't impulsive. It was familiar. Up close, the house was even more out of place. The siding wasn't beach house siding. It was older, stained with sun and salt. Wood, not composite. The porch sagged in one corner. The tower was bolted on with crude support beams that looked more industrial than residential. Like someone had slapped a lookout on a cottage and called it a second life. I walked the perimeter. No rental sign. No mailbox. No private property warning. Just a chain across the entrance and a handmade sign in faded black paint. Staff use only. I took out my phone. Pulled up the Airbnb listing we were staying at. Nothing in the photos showed this house. No mention of a staff residence nearby. I zoomed out. Checked neighboring properties. Nothing. It wasn't listed. Because it wasn't part of anything. Just there. Off-grid. I went around the back. The rear entrance was open, screen door latched, main door ajar. The kind of carelessness that isn't carelessness at all. That's when I heard it. Faint, but distinct. Shuffling. A voice. Low. Male. Then another. Ava. I didn't breathe. I pressed myself against the edge of the house, listening. He saw us yesterday, she said. I figured, the man replied. His voice was rough. Deeper than I expected. Casual in a way that suggested he was used to being hidden. But he didn't do anything. Probably still playing husband. A pause. Ivy saw, Ava added. That made him go quiet. Then, she's a kid. Kids forget. She won't, Ava said. She watches more than he does. The man laughed. You always did pick the passive ones. I stepped back then. A branch snapped under my shoe and I froze. Silence inside. Then fast footsteps. I turned and walked quickly back toward the beach, keeping my posture calm, like I'd just been strolling. No one followed me. But something in me changed then. This wasn't some affair that started on vacation. It was something much older. That night, after the kids were asleep, I sat on the deck and asked Ava if she'd ever been here before. She hesitated, just a beat, before answering. No. But she wouldn't look at me. Strange, I said. You seem familiar with the area. Even knew which cafes had soy milk. She laughed softly. It's a beach town. They're all the same. I nodded. Do you know someone named Ellis? That stopped her. Not because she didn't recognize the name, but because she knew she hadn't said it out loud in years. Her voice was careful now. Where'd you hear that? Ivy mentioned it. I lied. Said she thought the man in the tower looked like someone from a photo once. She leaned back, arms crossed over her stomach. Defensive, but quiet. Ellis was someone I dated. Before you. Lifeguard. She nodded slowly. Sort of. He did seasonal stuff. We weren't serious. I waited. Let the silence do the work. He was controlling, she added. We broke it off badly. I haven't spoken to him in years. Another lie. Because I remembered now. 3 years ago. A phone call I picked up by accident. A number she snatched from my hands and said, too quickly, wrong person. It wasn't wrong. It was just early. Later, when she went to bed, I pulled her laptop from her bag. She always cleared her history. Always locked her phone. But the laptop? She forgot it was synced to her browser. In the tabs, real estate listings in towns along this coast. And a bookmark page for a private rentals message board. One thread caught my eye. Long-term unlisted stay, tower room available, no formal address. And an email thread. Her name. His. LSS. It had been raining. Not heavy, not violent, just enough to blur the world outside the windows, to make everything feel quieter than it was. The kind of rain that makes a town feel like it's holding its breath. Ava was in the shower. The kids were watching a cartoon too loud in the other room. I sat with her laptop open on my lap, scrolling through the email thread like it was a wound I couldn't stop touching. Her messages were careful, sparse. No overt words. No confessions. But each line held weight once I understood the context. Is it still yours? Just for the week. Same arrangement. He doesn't know. I clicked into the attachments. One was a scanned sketch of the beach house floor plan. The tower had its own entrance. Separate keys. Insulated. Built for privacy. The other was a photo. Ava. On that porch. Not smiling. Not waving. Just sitting, barefoot, on the steps, a paperback open in her lap and a beer beside her. The timestamp was from 2 summers ago. The year she said she went to a writer's retreat in Vermont. I stared at her face. The calm in it. Not guilt. Not recklessness. Belonging. She had been here before. That night, after the kids were asleep and the rain had finally thinned into mist, I told her I couldn't sleep and went for a walk. I made sure she saw the flashlight in my hand. Made sure she thought I was just restless. But I went straight back to the house. This time I didn't knock. I walked around back again, found the same door, and tried it. Unlocked. The air inside smelled of mildew and citrus. A single light was on in the hallway, and I could hear the muffled buzz of a TV from above. I moved quickly, quietly, up the stairs of the tower. He was there, shirtless again. The same frame I'd seen from the sand. Thinner than I expected. Sinewy. Older than me by a few years, maybe, but with that washed-out look people get when they stop living for anything but impulse. He looked up when I stepped in. Didn't flinch. Thought you'd come sooner, he said. I closed the door behind me. Ellis. He grinned. You must be James. I didn't correct him. My name didn't matter in this room. He pointed at the second chair like this was a meeting. Like we were just 2 coworkers discussing a mutual project. She's complicated, he said. You're a coward. He chuckled. Probably. I didn't sit. She told me she hadn't seen you in years. She's a liar, he said plainly. But not to hurt you. That's not her thing. She lies to survive. To protect whatever she thinks is real. Whatever she thinks might last. You think this is going to last? He leaned back. His eyes were too calm. It already has. There was a photo on the wall. One I hadn't noticed before. Her and him. Sitting on a bench by a dock. The same robe she wore yesterday folded on her lap. His hand resting lightly on her thigh. It was framed like art. Centered. I pointed to it. You're not subtle. She gave me that, he said. 3 years ago. I took a step closer. If you ever come near my children now. He raised a hand. Don't flatter me. I'm not here for your kids. You shouldn't be here at all. He tilted his head, and something in his face changed. The grin fell away. I was here before you. I stared at him. He let the words sit. She came to me first. This beach. This house. She brought you here to see if she could override it. Rewrite something. But you can't paint over a foundation like that. Not when it's cracked through. I said nothing. Then he leaned forward, voice quieter now. She came back this year to end it. I think she really meant to. But then she saw me again, and something in her shifted. I clenched my jaw. She didn't tell me that, I said. She wouldn't. He stood then, not threatening, just rising, like a man excusing himself from a party. I won't stop her. I never have. She always makes the final call. But if you want to save what you've got left, you should leave. Tonight. Pack up the kids and go. She'd follow us. She won't. He opened the door behind me, and I walked out. As I passed through the hallway, I caught another framed photo. One I hadn't seen the first time. Ava and Ellis again, but this time younger. A beach trip, years ago. Different house, but same shore. Her in that same tilt of posture, arms folded, laughing at something he said. She hadn't just come back to temptation. She'd come back to her origin story. Back at the rental, she was already in bed, pretending to sleep. I watched her chest rise and fall, calm and smooth. I almost envied it. I climbed in beside her, didn't touch her, just stared at the ceiling until the sun threatened to rise. At 6 a.m., I woke the kids quietly, told them it was an adventure day. I loaded them into the car with snacks and blankets and said we were going to find a new place to stay. Ava came out as I was backing down the driveway. She wasn't surprised. She was holding that robe in her arms like something dying. "Where are you going?" she asked. I didn't answer. She stepped barefoot onto the gravel. "James?" I rolled the window down halfway. "Don't come after us," I said. She didn't cry, didn't yell, just looked, still, like she knew that was the last thing I'd ever say to her while we were still married. I didn't check my phone for 2 days. The kids and I holed up in a tiny motel 30 minutes inland, tucked behind a gas station and a shuttered antique shop. The walls were thin, and the sheets smelled faintly of bleach and cigarette ash, but the kids didn't seem to notice. Ben thought the vending machine was magic. Ivy spent the first night drawing on the motel notepad, stick figures of us in a car with giant wheels and Ava standing by the ocean alone. I didn't ask about the drawing. I didn't need to. She hadn't called. Not once. Not even to check on the kids. I don't know what that says about her. Maybe she knew she'd already used up all the space where an apology could fit. Or maybe Ellis was right. Maybe she wouldn't follow. Maybe she was never really trying to be followed at all. But on the third morning, I got a knock at the motel room door. I thought it might be the front desk or housekeeping. I wasn't prepared for the woman standing there. Early 50s, short silver bob. Eyes sharp enough to slice through lies before they were even spoken. "You must be James," she said. I didn't answer. I didn't have to. "I'm Maeve," she added. "Ellis's mother." That brought something to a halt inside me. She looked down at the doormat, then back at me. "I think we should talk." I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. We sat at the plastic table by the vending machine, next to a cracked ashtray filled with rainwater and a cigarette, but floating like a bloated fish. "I know what he is," she said without preamble. "I know what he's done." "Then why are you here?" "Because she's back at the house," she said. "And you need to understand what she's walking into." I felt my stomach turn. I thought she stayed with him. "She did," Maeve said. "But not for him. She came back to finish something. Something that should have ended a long time ago." She paused, lit a cigarette with a practiced flick, even though she hadn't looked like a smoker when she arrived. "My son wasn't always like this. When he met Ava, he was 17. She was 15. Too young. Too trusting. She followed him around like he was a storm, and she wanted to know where the eye was." I didn't speak. I let her go on. "He was cruel to her, but she didn't see it that way. Said he was intense. Passionate. It wasn't until she showed up with a bruise on her cheekbone that I realized he wasn't just a teenage boy pushing boundaries." I closed my eyes briefly. "You tried to stop it." "I did," Maeve said. "She left him after that. Moved away. Changed numbers. The usual escape act. But you don't escape someone like Ellis. You just postpone them." The wind picked up. The rain hadn't started again yet, but it would. Maeve took another drag, her hand trembling slightly. "When I heard she came back this summer, I warned him. I told him she was different now. Married. Mother. I told him not to ruin it. Not to ruin her. Did he listen? He never does." I stood then. My pulse had started pounding in my throat. "She's at the house now?" Maeve nodded. "Alone." I drove back with the kids still sleeping, the early morning fog clinging to the windshield like breath on glass. I parked 2 blocks away. Didn't want the car seen. Didn't want her to know I was coming. The house looked empty. No lights. No silhouette in the tower. I knocked once on the back door. She answered in silence. She looked like she hadn't slept. No makeup. Her eyes puffy. She was wearing the same robe, still clutching it like it meant something more than cloth. When she stepped back to let me in, I smelled sea air and something faintly metallic. Blood. My gut twisted. Ava. He's gone, she said quietly. I stepped inside. The tower stairs were dark. The door at the top open. And Ellis. He was sprawled on the floor, arm bent at the wrong angle, a bottle of gin spilled beside him, mixing with something darker. A gash above his eye. A smear of red against the floorboards like a half-finished thought. He slipped, Ava said before I could ask. We were arguing. He wouldn't let me leave. I looked at her, at the absence in her face. You called an ambulance? No. Why? I wasn't sure if he was breathing at first. And then, she shook her head. Then I realized I didn't want to save him. I stared down at the body. There was movement. Shallow. A flicker of breath. He's alive. For now. Her voice cracked a little. Not in fear. In exhaustion. I didn't come back to him, she said. I came back to end it. To make it real. I had to stand in the room again and feel what I felt, and know it wasn't love. That it had never been. I watched her. You should have told me. I thought if I left it buried, it would stay buried. I crouched next to Ellis, checked his pulse. Still steady. His eyelids fluttered. We need to call someone, I said. I will, she said. But I wanted you to see. I wanted you to know what I'm walking away from. And what are you walking toward? She looked at me then, and didn't answer. Because even she didn't know. I walked out without saying another word. Back to the car. Back to the kids. Back to the life that, whatever shape it had left, still belonged to me. We didn't go back to the beach. I knew that was something I couldn't give the kids again, not for a while. It was supposed to be a place of memory, sand between toes, orange juice boxes, sunscreen that never quite rubbed in. But the sand had been stained. The tower would always be there, even if they bulldozed it into the sea. Ava called once. 2 days after I saw her standing over Ellis's body. I let it ring. I already knew what she would say. I need to explain. I'm sorry, but I only wanted to feel something again. I deleted the voicemail. Later that night, I pulled into a rest stop just past the state line. Ivy had fallen asleep with her head against the window, her stuffed rabbit limp in her lap. Ben stirred in the back seat, mumbling in his sleep. I stood outside the car and looked up at the stars, at the sheer number of them. That kind of clarity only comes when you've left something behind. Not just physically, but irrevocably. I'd been grieving a version of Ava for years. Long before Ellis. Before the beach. Before that wave she gave, soft and tender and full of a past I hadn't been invited into. We met when we were both too young to know what we needed. I mistook her silence for serenity. She mistook my patience for permanence. We built a life on the assumption that love was a static thing, that once declared, it would stay where we put it. But love moves. It changes shape. And sometimes it dies without noise. A week later, I received a package. No return address. Inside, her wedding ring. The robe, washed and folded. And a note on the back of a torn receipt. For words, written in her unmistakable hand. I never wanted this. I stared at those words for a long time. Not in anger. Not even sadness. Just a dull ache. Like something healing wrong. She'd checked herself into a clinic, I later heard. Voluntary psychiatric care. The story in town was that Ellis had fallen during a domestic argument. Police had ruled it accidental. No charges. But that was the kind of clean story people told to keep the town from unraveling. What really happened up there? Only Ava and Ellis knew. And only one of them would be able to tell it. The other was in a coma. And stayed there. Weeks passed. I settled into a rhythm with the kids in a borrowed guest house outside of Portland, living off what was left of our savings. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Not about her. Not about us. Just words. Something to keep my hands moving. Every night, Ivy would ask if we were going home soon. And every night, I told her the same thing. We are home. As long as we're together, we are. Eventually, she stopped asking. I never filed for divorce. Not because I wanted her back, but because something about the finality of it felt dishonest. Ava had already left long before the beach, long before Ellis opened that door. And in a way, I had too. I just hadn't realized it. Some endings don't need court dates. They just happen quietly. With sand between your toes and a child's voice saying, "Mommy went up to her uncle." I sometimes think about that day, about that exact moment. When Ivy said those words and the world tilted, just slightly. And I remember looking up and seeing Ava wave, as if it had already happened. And maybe it had. Maybe it always had. Thanks for watching. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you never miss the next confession. Until next time, take care and watch who you trust.